For sure.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else, a bunch of us in our little posse, the ticket, the QR code was like, this has already been scanned.
Did it let you-
That was the one problem.
Yeah, you guys have that?
It said that I think if you'd opened it or something before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You just opened the email.
That happened to you guys, right? You had to go and learn.
And so we went up and then she said that it was because of how many tickets the board had.
Oh,
Oh, because it's pretty quick.
those are really amazing.
Yeah, because we're like so popular. You have to double check us. Ah. Sure.
All right. The Tuesday, January 1st work session of the Port of Olympia will come to order. I'm Jasmine Basavita, President of the Port of Olympia, and we have all commissioners present for today's meeting. I guess we'll begin by seeking approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Motion to approve. Second. Any discussion? And the agenda is approved. Well, item number 1, commission committee assignments. Will you be leading that conversation, Director Smith?
Surely, I would be happy to do that. So we sent out to you a chart that includes the various committees that the commission has been assigned to historically. And on this chart, we put the name of it, when they meet, who was assigned in 23, who was assigned in 24. For all of them, we proposed staff person to either be support, or I know the commission has discussed perhaps some of these are more staff person rather than commissioner. So that person could either be a support to the commissioner who's assigned, or could be the port assignee to the commission. If you notice on some of these, there's a little asterisk by the name of the committee. That means it is one that requires a publicly elected official to be the person who attends meetings. So for those, we definitely need a commissioner assigned. But for the others, we welcome a conversation and your decision around whether a commissioner would like to attend, of the board staff or someone. But that just open it up for your discussion.
I would just clarify that the VCB, currently the bylaws require an elected and they are only considering changing that, but they haven't changed it yet.
Okay, we will asterisk that as well. Thank you.
VCB,
Visitors Convention Bureau.
yes, they are considering changing their policy, but it has not yet been changed. So currently it still needs an elected.
Do they have a new director?
I would take a minute to similarly note that the Economic Development Council used to need an elected, has not convened with me on the board during my year here. And in part, they had said they were reconsidering that policy. I understand that recently they have a new board president, Malcolm Miller. And so I will have to confirm what their policy is.
Okay, and I will note that our new Director of Community and Economic Development, Mike Reed, and I have a lunch date with Michael Cade later this week, I believe. And that was one of the questions we wanted to ask, was about having a port commissionership on the board.
I'm sorry, one more administrative. The VCB has requested, or not requested, told us we can only have one representative technically. So, not two. Or creativity for a loop.
Little more continuity, I understand.
Yeah, I think that that's up the numbers.
And so I can just ask a question, maybe to kick this off, for the Washington Public Ports Association trustee position, is that typically the president of the port commission? Yes. Okay, so is that one we can pretty easily fill in now?
Yep. And then the ones that are regional, or geographically based, we have traditionally attached to the commissioner. For instance, Commissioner Sanders representing steady. We don't have to do that. There is some overlap on some of them, but that might be low hanging fruit also. Missed an S.
there any other discussion? Are there particular desires or wishes that any members would like to share with the group?
People like to continue on some of these or
But I was gonna say, I
lift it up?
I'd be happy to continue the same assignments from this year.
I am totally open. The only one that would need to change, and Commissioner Tong, I'm totally fine with you taking the role at the Visitor Convention Bureau or taking it, whichever you would prefer, is fine with me, so.
I think I would let you have that one first. I think you overcommit from turning them regularly.
What'd you say? I just have two, so if somebody feels like they've got too much, I'm happy to take some on or we just stick with the two. It's up.
Do you have any interest in the Solid Waste Advisory Committee? It's actually really interesting and I've had a hard time making the meetings. It's at like 10:30. What does it say? 10? It has to be an elected. I don't know if that's one you would be interested in. I've really enjoyed the meetings, but I haven't done the best job participating.
And while you think of that, that the Transportation Policy Board, I have had trouble with it because of some family commitments I had that morning. I've managed to cover it, but if anyone has an interest in it, I'd happily cede space to them.
And I'm pretty sure they moved it to 8:30, correct?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so it's no longer the 7 a.m.
Right.
Right, okay. So that one's at 8:30, but on the
But
same
you're
day.
Still looking for a potential.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Solid waste budget, okay.
Well, I would take either one. Or both. If we need to. I mean, those times, what did we say the time, is it the Transportation Policy Board? Is that one you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Wednesday at 8:30.
It's not at 7 anymore. You said it's at 10?
8:30.
Oh, 8:30. Yeah, well, that would work then,
And the Solid Waste Advisory is at 10,
on the first Wednesday.
Yeah.
That should also work.
and that's available on Zoom or at the Public Works Building in South Olympia, Tumwater.
We'll take both of those.
Sure.
On the EDC, you want us all to, do some digging with Michael Kay to find out first about having a commissioner on the board.
Well, I would very much like that opportunity. Right now, I don't have any interface with a chamber, with with any kind of business interest. To understand the community's interests there, so.
And I think us having a presence on there is critical for the work that we have going.
Okay,
So reestablishing that, whatever that looks like.
okay, well, we'll put your name down again then, Commissioner, and then we'll just talk to Michael Kate about that.
Thank you.
Um,
And is the co leading working for the Capitol Lake and Sea Level?
I think it's worked. The way we've done it has been that I've been first on the Capitol Lake and Maggie has been first on the sea level rise. You can't see that through this chart. You would just reverse our names, I guess, on the Capitol Lake. I also want to acknowledge, though, that Commissioner Tong has had interest in those. And now we have created a separate downtown subcommittee. So I'm open to conversation about those. I don't know how active the executive work group will be now that there has been the intergovernmental agreement. I mean, I assume at some point it can be convened. So just
Yes, I'd be interested. Maybe once the meetings.
revisit later.
What are the meetings?
The sea level rise is quarterly, so it's not monthly. And Deschutes is monthly.
Or had been monthly.
Had been.
It says now quarterly. there's a real advantage to having at least one of these committees where you interact with the other governmental groups, leaders, and so I would love to stay engaged with at least one of these because unless we hear that the EDC is changing,
Is there one that you're more interested in?
Not really, both are pretty interesting.
sea level rise is in theory a more regional focus, though in practice it might not be. I don't know what you anticipate.
In terms of the participants, Sea Level Rise Collaborative is narrower. It's really focused on downtown Olympia. I think it's city, lot, us. The Deschutes Estuary is broader because you've got state agencies, you've got all the Lacey City of Tumwater, as well as lot and us. So
Either. Meeting times is all, just want to make sure that I make it realistic.
Sometimes they have been like at 11 or noon or 1, and they do set them some time in advance. I don't know when the next meeting is.
Yeah, knowing it.
and I will say for more active engagement, Sea Level Rise Collaborative may be, as Commissioner Pasavita said, something to jump into now, because I do think there's going to be a bit of a break with the Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary Executive.
So would you like to take my role on the sea level rise?
Sure.
Collaborative?
Ready?
Since I took a different.
So, oh wait, that was sea level rise. And then leaving it the same with Sanders Vasavita on Capitol Lake, but that's kind of got a pin in it a little bit.
Yeah, and it's kind of more revert. I'm the first on that one and Sanders is the second.
So if we're looking at allocation of time and duties, Commissioner Ayal is now carrying quite a bit of the load. Chair Vasavita, you will, Chair, you will obviously have other duties but would you like to take one of? Is there anything of that you allocated to Commissioner Ayal that you would want?
Well, they're all wonderful, but no. It's not necessary. I think that there's a lot happening with lot, literally, and it's interesting. Is lot on here?
No,
Because we don't have a place in that. Okay,
just the local jurisdictions, cities.
so, yeah, happy to fill in as needed or take the solid waste advisory committee if Mr. Ayal feels like he's now taken more monthly meetings than he anticipated.
No, actually, it's okay, because I have the 2 new monthly meetings, but the Yelm Chambers, I mean, that's like 5 minutes from my office and not a big deal to bump over there. And then the JBLM Community Connector, there's that's pretty hit and miss. That's just invitation on occasion that I think there's something coming up in February that I'll go to, but that one is not very active.
All right. So aside from the changes we discussed today, we're pretty much just moving on, just continuing on with the same assignments. All right, and I think we'll redo this chart with the new names for 2025 and then recirculate just to verify, and then just know that you have a port staff person who's assigned to help, and if there's a situation where you want them to attend or provide you some information in advance or on your behalf, that's what they're there for.
I think that's great.
Okay,
Quickly tell Misty who the list is. You got some low talkers out there.
oh, yeah, I'll give you
Okay.
this when we're done.
All right, so we had a request. The follow-up is Director Smith will share her notes with Missy to finalize that. Will we need to bring it forward for approval or?
Think so. Okay, we'll bring it, we can have it at the next commission meeting as either a consent item or an action other, however you guys.
I think consent would be fine.
Okay. All right.
All right, so if discussion is wrapped on that, let's move to commission rules resolution, which is D on the agenda.
All right. So commissioners, this was in response to conversations I've had with several of you and also, we want to do what we can to make this a manageable job for all of you. So the commission rules resolution went through and made some proposed changes to accomplish a couple of goals. One was, some changes for brevity and clarity. Second was to align with current practices. So for instance, setting agendas, you all are now doing in work sessions, rather than just between the committee president and the executive director, so aligning that. And then sort of clarifying what work sessions are for, also trying to put some definition and clarity around what's for the consent agenda. And then, the sort of biggies were changing the number of commission meetings a month, and this was just a sort of straw dog proposal discussion. Resolution was changing from 2 commission business meetings a month to 1 business meeting a month plus a work session. But I also provided for you, compiled a list of what other ports in the state do, and it's about probably 60% do 2 business meetings a month. Another 30 some odd percent do 1 business meeting a month. It's either the smaller ports or the Port of Tacoma does that, but they also have Seaport Alliance and subcommittees. And then there's 1 port that has 3 advertised meetings a month, and that's us. Because we schedule out and advertise in advance our business meetings session. So there are lots of alternatives. You could still do 2 business meetings, but not have a regularly scheduled work session. We could go down to 1 business meeting a month. It's really just a straw dog for your discussion. And then the third thing that we propose and want to talk about is when public comment happens in the meetings. And right now, I think staff feels a little frustrated, and I know I've heard from some of you that you feel a little frustrated that when we do an advisory item and then have public comment right after, there's no real opportunity to answer questions or comments that are raised in response to that advisory item. Because you all, it's a practice that the commission doesn't engage in a back and forth, and the staff member, it doesn't really have an ability to get up. And so it just sort of sits as unanswered questions for 2 weeks until it comes back as an action item. And so we'd like to structure the public comment in a way that we can be more responsive to it. So the proposal is just have 1 section for public comment at the beginning of the meeting, make it very clear that the goal of that public comment period is for people to comment on anything that's on the agenda. Or any other port business they want to talk about, but primarily so we get, and sort of in advance of doing advisory presentations, we understand what the questions and concerns are of the public. And then either we can try to address those in our presentations to you, or commissioners can also ask us those questions if we have not done a good job of responding to the comments. So it's a way to meaningfully and quickly respond to concerns and things that are raised. So that's really the proposal, is to just have 1 big public comment period at the beginning and not have separate comment periods for action other advisory items.
That's how all of our jurisdictional partners do it.
Yeah.
Right. We're the only ones.
Yes.
We're the outlier on a lot of these things.
I know. Go for it. So, your discussion.
Yeah, that does seem understandable. Seems like we would be able to address things a little more focused and on topic when the public is asking questions and bringing things up, but maybe we should address this in our public comment statement. I would think ahead of time, that statement that's read by the president, that this is why we're doing this is how we do this, and explain to them. And we'll do our best to respond throughout instead of saying we don't question.
Mr. Isle?
Yeah, so if we, if we're gonna take away the public comment period after advisory items, can you tell me again, I think you probably already said this, but just so I really understand, how are we gonna get questions from, because it seems like if you don't have questions on the advisory calendar items and you wait until the next meeting prior to the meeting, that's a short period of time for us to consider what the public comment is. Does that make sense? Am I saying that
Yeah,
right?
and I think my thought was that people would read the materials in advance of the meeting. And so they would have already, because we put the PowerPoint presentations in the packet and make those available.
Okay.
As the cover memo.
So we're counting on people
Yes.
making comment prior to the advisory presentation.
Yes, that's the hope. And I think that's how our sister jurisdictions do it.
Yeah.
They sort of impose an obligation on folks who want to comment, to familiarize themselves.
Well, I think that it's, we'll streamline the meetings and, I think we've always been quite generous with the public comment, even though we have a 30-minute limit, we've had situations where we've certainly had other much more than 30 minutes of public comment, and the commission has always, allowed everybody to have their say. So, I don't know that would change. So, but it's, I guess I'm personally in favor of these changes.
I think that it's streamlined.
I agree. I think that we will continue to have a spirit of the commission that we encourage public comment and robust public comment when we have people there to participate. And I think making our meetings run more efficiently does a service both to us as an organization as well as to the public, because it makes it very clear when we're gonna take public comment, what it's gonna be on. I think it can be really confusing of like, well, do I give it now or do I give it later? I think we have a lot of prepared people that come to our meetings with comments, and the idea is not that it's this back and forth conversation. That's one of the things when we did our parliamentary procedure training, like this is a formal meeting. So taking the comment in, I think it's a very appropriate way to hear what the public has to say without it becoming a dialogue, which is not the appropriate forum for a dialogue. So, and I would just encourage everyone to keep coming. I think all 5 commissioners really appreciate the input.
I just think it's really important that we reiterate the other comment options as well. Reaching out commissioners or portalolympia.com, but reaching out to the staff as well.
What I like about this option, Alex, is that as commissioners, we often receive emails in advance from concerned constituents. Often it's the day of the hearing. So we have some idea of what concerns they're likely to raise. And then when they testify, we get much more detail about a specific concern they have. This really empowers us as their representatives when the staff expert is there to decide to elevate a question for clarification. It gives the staffer a chance to hear where it's coming from. And so what I would hope for this to really advance our engagement with the community, what I'd hope is that the staffers listening to the comments as well, they're figuring out what they can integrate into their presentation. And they're prepared for commissioners to be magnifying what we heard during that early portion. Like we heard in the public comment testimony concern about this. So that is something I'm grateful if our staff are willing to do. I know there's been a history of feeling like this is years ago, ancient history, that we don't want questions that people were prepared for. And if we're moving towards sort of a trusting port, we trust the community trusts us. Staff will be able to sometimes have a question that just came up and say, this is my understanding, but I'll have to look more at this and get back to you. And so we'll have a better record at what we're seeking to respond to moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that, Commissioner. And I think staff really welcome this idea because they want to be able to respond to questions and comments. And I think sometimes it's hard when the structure has prevented us all, prevented them from being able to step up, answer the question. Yeah, they want to share with the community what we're doing and what we're thinking.
And over time, if that becomes the norm where things are answered, either the advisory or the action, it's all of us or both. That's gonna, the trust is gonna, it's great, gonna build up over. time.
Can we go back to the straw dog about the number of
Yes.
business meetings?
So just folks are okay if I bring back for an advisory on Monday night, the provision around public comment, changing up the way we do public comment. Okay.
And I just wanted to confirm, because Commissioner Kong brought this up, the preamble about,
Yeah, you can
Where-
make sure we edit.
does that need to be,
the
I'm
pre-
trying to find it in,
It's in the normal agenda for.
is it in our resolution? That says like, we won't respond, because that was in response to ning, 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 ning happening, which is not what anyone is saying, but I'm just wondering if the language needs to be modified to reflect, well, we will be responding in our presentations to
Right.
substantive.
Will you bring us back a proposal of that language at the same time?
Yep, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm not finding it. right.
Yeah. Yes, happy to do that. Yeah.
Then another item you mentioned was reducing the business. Right now, I think your straw dog proposal keeps one business meeting and one work session.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, are there, is it a practice to have two noticed meetings? So everyone knows business might happen on the second and fourth Monday of a month. But then slot work sessions within those meetings?
I think you all have the freedom to do that. Because, and I think, that's partly the purpose for like the other business portion of the agenda is that if there are other things you all want to discuss or discuss in more depth. Yeah, there's room for that. I think traditionally, I mean, it would allow actually anytime they can make public comment on anything related to port business, but typically these work sessions don't allow for public comment. It really is a time for you all to be able to talk, and so there would be options for public comment at the beginning of the meeting.
So is your
That's it.
question essentially, what's the benefit of a work session?
No, I do see the benefit of this place where we can just talk. It was more the possible concern. Think of kind of the flow of work with us over a year. And when there's like a lease or something that's being worked out or a contract amendment that we get briefed on, but where the action has to take place relatively quickly. I would rather keep two meetings that are known and saved in everyone's schedule than start having a lot of emergency meetings because we didn't have that holder. At the same time, I really support the idea of having kind of 2 meetings a month. I think that cadence seems right for a port our size. And then the third thing I'm thinking, and then I'd like to put it out to all of you, is that the work session I think is really nice, but often more and more we're being asked for town halls and other forms of engagement that aren't going to fit within the regular work session spot. And so those are all the 3 things I'm thinking of. And I'll just go around and ask what other people are considering as we try to come to an answer about the number of business meetings and when we have them.
Yes, I think 2 meetings a month is sufficient most months, but to your point, likely need special meetings during certain months, budgets or contract amendments, things like that. So that's where it gets tricky. I wouldn't want to say we're going to have those 2 meetings for the public and then be canceling 1 meeting a month that certain public may think that we would be having or holding. That would be my only concern there.
I think that the amount of energy that goes into preparing for a public meeting, if we recalibrated the staff and the commission and the public around 2 meetings a month, I think it would be more efficient at getting business done. I get what you're saying, and sometimes there will be things that need more expediency, but hopefully that's rare. Hopefully we can condition ourselves that once a month is when we're voting on. I'd be open to kind of plugging in the work session like you're saying, or calling it 2 commission meetings, but 2 meetings a month to me seems like the right amount. I personally don't feel that there's a level of informality with work sessions because it's still public record. It's still like quoted in the newspaper. Like it feels like still a formal meeting to me. So to me, there's no difference of whether it's a formal business meeting or a work session. I mean, we can sit down here whenever we want. There's nothing in here that says you must sit. So I'm open as to the structure of that, but I would encourage 2 meetings. I think creating a manageable workload for commissioners makes it more equitable, and I think it allows more diverse people to participate. I think if the workload is too high, you only get people who have abundant resources or abundant time. And I would like to see more diverse people participating in the Port of Olympia. So the more that we can create a manageable workload, I think the more we'll create better opportunities for people.
Yeah, what's left to say? I mean, I'm good with the 2 meetings a month.
I think then the language in the, right now supposes 1 business meeting and 1 work session.
Right.
When we're saying 2 meetings a month, is that what everyone's saying they're good with? Or would it be 2 business meetings with the expectation that one of them would be largely devoted to work session?
Well, I will say the other commission I looked at, other port commissions I looked at, it's 2 regular business meetings a month that they have. And then they schedule work sessions more as an ad hoc or special meeting if there's a need. And I think there is room in a regular business meeting to have a conversation around a topic without a decision being made, an action item.
So do you think that from a Port of Olympia standpoint, having the ability to conduct business twice a month is necessary and more prudent than having a work session and a?
I will say, I think staff gets a little nervous around the thought of giving it. The
One.
only option is an advisory 1 month and action a month later, when there's things that happen and you'd like to have a quicker turnaround. I think there've been times over the past calendar year where it's felt like we are trying to find work session topics for the commission. And I think it feels like a little more forced in terms of the topics. But we also talked at the staff level about things like, are there ways to reduce the business load? So right now, any contract over $300,000 needs to go to the commission for approval. Any lease year needs to go to the commission for approval. And so there are things in the delegation of authority that can be done to sort of lessen the load on you all, if that's something that is of interest.
I personally would support using the consent agenda more liberally because that allows, and getting kind of like what you've done here. If we're doing 300,000 and everyone else is doing 1 million, well, then we're just behind. So if that needs to be recalibrated, great. And if we're at the right number, then just more liberally using the consent agenda because the commission still has eyes on it. The public still has eyes on it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't eat up meeting time.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we can really improve on this year is just the and I think that it's very, the reason that we swung the other way as far as robust meeting topics is because we were rebuilding the organizational trust and culture. And I think it was very healthy and natural for the staff to make sure that the commission was getting briefed on everything. And now that we have healthy culture and trust, we can swing back a bit to, like, no, we trust you, you're doing a good job. Which is exciting.
Well, we're on
Good job.
While we're on the consent agenda, I looked at the markup you provided. And it does say we would still, any member of the commission can always pull something off the consent agenda. I would like to encourage us to have an informal practice where we attempt to look at it and make, that call in advance. That doesn't mean we won't sometimes, because it's something we heard, just do it, but try to be diligent in identifying in advance if we want to pull something off the consent agenda.
Just so giving chair heads up or Alex.
And Alex, yeah.
And I think we will have. Yeah, actually having a heads up is great because we don't, part of the challenge for staff too is that we put in a lot of time and effort into cover memos and PowerPoints together. And so if it's something that maybe doesn't need a ton of work, that's helpful to know. But if you all want more of a presentation, that is very helpful to know.
So just just to note that the wording is that to remove something from the consent agenda, it has to be done by motion during the approval of the agenda portion. It doesn't give the flexibility of doing it at the time.
Right, once the agenda is published, right, there's a,
Yeah.
we publish in the packet that goes out to the public and us at the same time.
Yeah.
That formally it would have to be done during the meeting, but the heads up would allow staff to
Yeah.
be prepared to present
And
when we're able to.
Yeah, and maybe this, whenever we're doing agenda sort of setting, we try to identify in advance whether we think something's for consent, et cetera. And so as we walk through that, if you all are like, ooh, that's not one, then that's super helpful. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is 2 business meetings a month.
That's what most other boards do.
And does that mean that we're essentially not going to have a regular scheduled work session? For
Well,
this
yeah.
conversation?
Yeah, and that's an interesting thought. So talking about scheduling, it's it's good to have a placeholder, even if you don't have that week. But how to, so maybe have it on people's calendars as a placeholder, but we don't have it as part of our published schedule.
Monthly?
I mean, it's a way to make sure that time is sort of already.
So we're balancing transparency so the public knows when they can expect that something's gonna happen and they can plan accordingly with flexibility, right? It seems to me it will rarely be the case that you're suddenly gonna need a special meeting during that particular work session time. In the past, the way that exec sessions have been managed, which that does sometimes emerge an urgent need for an exec session. They've typically been right before or after the business meeting. So I guess in holding that special meeting spot, which again, you can't decide, we're gonna engage the Olympia Council during our special, during our work
Right.
session time, it doesn't work that way. Or have a town hall during that time necessarily. Do you anticipate that it would be the kind of time when you'd be like, oh, we need an exec session, so we'll use this time that we've held?
Good. I mean, I definitely want to make it easy for you all. And so, for example, Lot, they have one meeting a month and they have a work session. They all go to dinner and they have a work session for an hour before their regular meeting. So they sort of power pack everything into one meeting. But having a quick work session, a long work session before the regular meeting is also something we could do, similar to.
I personally would prefer making it 2 meetings and then adding on to an existing meeting rather than taking a whole nother day. Because I think we will just take the whole nother day. It's like, if
Yeah.
it's there, we'll use, but we won't necessarily use it efficiently.
Okay.
Like, I think conditioning ourselves to be like, this is our time.
Boundaries around ourselves.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's my personal opinion.
Alex, how, do you think you could structure it so there's 2 business meetings, right? They're pretty much, first and third or whatever. And where we're trying to really do the business we're basically experimenting with public knowledge that we have the second meeting. We're experimenting to tee things up for the monthly business meeting. Instead of treating them as equal. So that basically we are kind of experimenting with trying to keep the other one largely for other extra
Oh, I see.
work session, but it's noticed, anyone knows if they're in the community and they're a concerned citizen, that there could be business happening at that time in that regular
In terms of the work session time or the second meeting of the month?
business. So they're both business meetings.
Right.
We're trying, you said a lot of courts have 1 business meeting.
Well, yeah, actually, there are a fair number, yeah.
So we could try towards that direction, but for now, keep 2 solid business meetings, so everyone is on notice that there can be business happening at
Yeah. And so try to slowly condition ourselves into the first meeting of the month really is more loaded up with advisories. Then the second meeting of the month, a lot of those go to consent perhaps, or are more perfunctory action items. And then there's more space during that meeting for work session like conversations. Yeah, we do that.
But I think looking at the ports that are having 2 meetings a month is more representative of our port than the 1 meeting a month.
Yeah.
Because most of those are teeny, or Tacoma, Grays Harbor and Tacoma are kind of the outliers. So I think we're gonna need 2.
And
But
we're so deeply entwined with the downtown, that
Right.
there's so much more community interest in our port's work than something
Yeah.
else.
So in terms of the resolution, do we want to keep a regularly scheduled work session? It sounds like the answer is no.
I would say no.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And then from a public perspective, kind of like you were, if we add on a work session before a meeting, people are already conditioned for our business meeting, so we're not throwing something out of left field.
To your point, they don't have to take a whole nother day.
Right. And like, they're already reading the pack, they're already like looking at the website, they're already, it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
It's 5:30 on Monday, is that at this time, or is that later in the agenda that you want to talk about that?
Well, no, it's now. So another question is Monday the best night to have commission meetings? There's a great thought of sometimes stuff has happened over the weekend and it's really hard to react in time to address it with you all on Monday night. And it starts everybody's week off with a bang, whether you want it to or not. So we could change it to like a Wednesday evening. It's really up to you guys about when you want to have these meetings.
I would prefer not Wednesday.
Me too.
I like Monday. I'm conditioned for Monday.
Yeah, I'm okay with Monday. too.
Monday or Tuesday, I would be.
Yeah, I would say if you really think Monday is impacting staff negatively, then we could consider Tuesday, but the further you get into the week, I think people lives go.
Well, and we can absolutely keep it. There's not been any major problems. It's just a thought of like, it's different than.
I mean, I, for one, because I have school-age children and there's always these long weekends, I would love it to be Tuesday. But that's not the reason for the whole jurisdiction to do it
Yeah.
Tuesday. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm very happy with Tuesday, but Monday is what we signed up.
The only other consideration for Tuesday is, for instance, we sit on the Visitor and Convention Bureau, which has a meeting on Monday. Well, when there's a holiday on Monday, we have our business meeting so if we were Tuesday, it would be consistent because there aren't holidays on Tuesday.
Right.
Like, so it's moving from Monday to Tuesday somewhat regularly, honestly, with Memorial Day, President's Day, right, so I mean, what do you guys think about Tuesday? Or even for Monday?
I don't see a reason why Tuesday wouldn't work. Can't think of anything right now.
I've really built around Mondays, but I could try to figure out a Tuesday.
Let's just leave it with,
That's a reason not to.
yeah,
do
that's
Yeah,
a,
we
that's a
can-
good
We
reason.
can leave it at Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no pressing urgency to change.
Yeah.
It's just.
Is 5:30 the right time?
Well, I was gonna say earlier that I think keeping it at 2 business meetings a month is pretty important because we don't want to wind up having 4-hour meetings because we didn't have to pack everything into one, so. I'm okay with 5:30. As long as we remember my go to bed at 8.
On that one.
Is 5:30, is there a better time for the staff? Like, is 5 better because it's contiguous with the workday? Does it not matter? I mean, I assume 5:30 historically was because people were off work and they could come to the meeting. The
Yeah.
majority of people have access to Zoom if they are on their way to the meeting, or I don't know.
And
If
if-
5,
To me, right now, 5:30 was sort of to make sure that any commissioners who worked had a chance to get down here and start.
I think
Well,
that's.
public too.
There still are a fair amount of, there's a lot of more flexibility in work days. There are swing shift workers, but in general, most people can build it in by 5:30 and
Okay.
not necessarily before.
Okay.
I also would like to then try to manage meetings now that we'll know in advance who's signed in to testify. We can try to have a commitment to 2-hour meetings and to being out by 8 at the latest. We all get, I think that's the best way to do it as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also 5:30, it gives us, if we do want to do a work session or executive session, we know 4th day. at like 4:30, and then it doesn't feel too disruptive. to your days,
Mhm.
so. All right. Yeah, I have all the answers I need on the commission resolution. What's more you want to discuss?
I guess as far as the meeting minutes being signed by the president and the secretary, we've entrusted them in a leadership role. That seems totally
I
reasonable,
think it was just a question of making, it's difficult to collect signatures from
Right.
all of you sometimes.
which
and
is
so
fine.
just streamlines it, and it's consistent with what.
And just your number 3 on the consent agenda. I just want to reflect back. So I think we're all saying, let's try and more liberally use the consent agenda. And if we want things off, we're gonna be proactive about pulling them off. And if you see too many things getting pulled off, then we're too liberally using the consent agenda.
Yeah.
But for now, we're gonna defer more in that direction.
Okay.
And just reflecting back that that is thanks to the great staff that we have and the team and the good work that's being done and confidence in that. So,
Yes.
Well said.
and as far as the delegation of authority, that's another conversation, right?
Yeah.
And is that something that's on your radar?
It only in the sense of trying to lessen the burden for you all to. So we can revisit at maybe a future work session or now. The delegation of authority, if you all want to. I mean, if you all are perfectly happy with it, then.
I think it's kind of like this meeting schedule, understanding where we are an outlier without reinventing the wheel. I mean, we don't want you to have to go spend 100 hours on a document, so you're in charge of staff time, but I think if the staff had recommendations on areas where we need to evolve our delegation of authority to be in keeping with the times, I would like to hear that.
And maybe we can fold this in to the commission retreat, because I think there's some other either policies that we have. Where it's a delegation with, we're not in lockstep with even state law. We're artificially limiting ourselves, so we'd love to bring that to you all.
And I previously said this a lot of times, but when executive director authority is being used for under $100,000 contracts, and then those are being brought back as renewals at very much larger amounts, that is defeating the intent of the policy.
Yeah.
So I think that that's where, like, no matter what the policy is, it can be subverted. And we need to figure out how to have appropriate oversight.
It's not just subverting your policy, but it's also, there's contracting laws that are
Right.
too keen on that as well. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So I think giving you the leeway to do your job should be the goal. And then we can have oversight through the consent agenda or.
I just want to make a note, you referenced the commission retreat. I think
Yes.
the next retreat that's scheduled is February 25th,
Yes.
Tuesday. And so
Yeah.
when will that be noticed to the public?
I don't know, Missy, I think it doesn't need to be noticed until pretty close to it, but we're happy to notice it earlier. Sarah, by what you wanted.
We have heard concerns in the past about it not being clear, and so I just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, we'll do it before the end of January, definitely. Try to go the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think if we have things on the calendar, the sooner we can have them public facing, the better.
Okay.
And I think as we're getting our flow, having an annual calendar, which we're trying to work towards.
Yes.
But the budget retreat is on this day every year.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's a little bit of a misnomer in the calendar, but while the intent wasn't to have this upcoming retreat be a budget retreat,
Okay.
it's meant to be a retreat where we do want to discuss some of the financial items and issues you all have brought up, like G&A allocation and sort of some bigger financial policies and things. But also want to get some conversation with you about your goals for 2025. We want to keep building off of the strategic plan we have, but understand what your goals are for this year. And then love to have a retreat later this year where you guys help us with a strategic plan for 26 to 30.
And one of the things that I expressed to Alex that would like to express to the whole commission is just that the previous executive director's performance reviews were based on accomplishing the strategic goals, which is kind of common HR practice at that level to tie it to the organizational performance. And I think refreshing our strategic goals so that they're updated, because we already got to 5 commissioners. That was one of our strategic goals. Well, that's not on there anymore, right? We did it. So refreshing those so that Alex has a sense of like what our expectations of the performance of the organization are will help her to feel like she knows what her expectations are.
I don't know how much organization is necessary during a work session of our conversation. I just want to note, it looks like we're starting to move, and I did with the retreat comment, beyond the commission rules resolution. Do you have everything you need for now on the
I do.
rules resolution?
Thank
Great. Then it's natural, we're talking about the retreat as part of our agenda setting topics conversation. So I just want to note that we're on item E. And while we're on the retreat, you know, Mike Reed joined us, and I would love to have a presentation on his view of economic development and on opportunities for the Port of Olympia throughout the county. As part of that work.
Okay.
Or at an upcoming business meeting that has a work session.
Righty. So one thing we were, I guess I can sort of walk you through what's coming, and you can, and what we were thinking as consent items. And then you all can weigh in, and then we also would love your thoughts on future topics. So we were contemplating having an executive session. I'm not sure if we will on the Dancing Goats purchase. I think we've come to a final the language of a purchase and sale agreement around the purchase price we've already discussed. So we may not need an executive session on that. For the consent agenda, there's a side letter of agreement with ILW 47A because we had some errors in the agreement you all approved previously. Also on the consent agenda is authorization for executing the second remedial action grant for the budding cleanup. And then approving the commission committee assignments. I think what I'd like to do is not have an action around commission meeting schedule and rules resolution, but instead do an advisory on what we discussed today. And then bring that back February 10th. And then we'll do an advisory on the capital budget amendment and then authorization for the purchase and sale agreement for the Dancing Goats building. And then bring that back for approval on the 10th. So that would be an advisory. And then on the advisory for the option lease agreement for Panattoni, I think we've run into a little bit of a hiccup. Warren is out and apparently maybe out for a little while. We're not sure yet. We haven't heard back from him. And so regardless, we want to get it done no later than the February, have an action item that's approved no later than the February 24th meeting agenda. So more to come on whether Panattoni is an advisory on Monday. Then February 10th, we have a visit from the Latvian delegation. We need an action, or we'd love to get an action item for you all on the Dancing Goats building purchase. And then again, it'll either be an advisory, or likely we'll move the advisory on Panattoni to the February 10th.
Would you mind telling us more about the visit from the Latvian delegation?
Well, that is a delegation that is connected with one of our local Rotaries, the West Olympia Rotary, and they are connected to a group that does some international exchange, and the Latvian delegation wants to come over and understand more about political and community engagement in the United States. So there will be 5 people and an interpreter. And they thought they wanted to come see how the Port of Olympia works, how we do political and community engagement. So we're seeing about, can we set up something where, you know, you all recognize them, maybe they can introduce themselves, and maybe even a little Q&A or something if they have any questions for you poor commissioners. So that's happening on the 10th. And then February 27th, Commissioner Isle having a town hall. So that is also on our radar screen and schedule. And then the only other thing that's out there, we've got a tentative HCP update. We want to have something to speak to you all with, and we're still sort of in a conversational mode that we'd like to be. And then March 10th is the airport master plan adoption and. So on the list of topics, future topics, I have reached out to Lisa Parks at the city of Tumwater to see if her council is game for another dinner like we had with the City of Olympia Council. I have not heard back from her on that. And there were a couple of things that Commissioner Harding wanted to put on the list. One was the Sailors Union of the Pacific legislative request. The Sailors Union of the Pacific has a request for workforce development for the maritime sector. And they want support from local jurisdictions. So we wanted to put that on the agenda for you all to discuss and consider.
And that's reasonably time sensitive,
Yeah, so it
um,
should be this coming. Okay, we'll move that over
So I
there.
don't know if, but I wanted to, this gentleman who's involved with the Sailors Union, did he reach out to you as well?
And last year too.
Oh, so
The court last year
supported.
to support.
Yeah, essentially it's expressing our support for what he's doing. It's not a large ask, but I wanted to make sure it was in front of the group. So is that something you guys,
Is that an action other or consent?
Is it an action even?
Is it action? or
it would,
just
I
the
think it would
business?
require action for us as a commission to sign on to it. I'm fine with it being a consent item if you guys feel like, or I try not to use the action other when possible. But what do you think, Chair? Madam?
I'm comfortable with it being action other, and I
Okay.
actually think it might be nice for him to talk about the workforce opportunities. I mean, I think sometimes we forget that we're connected more broadly. But some of our staff, like option, you see that they're part of a much bigger community of workers.
Okay. We will add that as an action other on the 27th. And then the other one you raised, Commissioner Harding, was Kelly Golub and Sports Complex.
So I've heard some of my fellow commissioners expressing interest in sports things. And the destination master plan work that Experience Olympia and Beyond did very much indicates the need for sports things. And I'm using that language because it literally could be anything. Soccer, baseball, volleyball, indoor, outdoor, we need it all. So open-ended. Kelly Golub is a local guy that has actually put some elbow grease into getting some drawings rendered from an architect. He has some ideas. In my experience, he has been very open to how it can best serve the community and doesn't seem to be particularly married to a particular outcome, which I like. Some of the other initiatives have been like only semi-professional soccer or only, so anyway, I'm queuing that up as a general topic and then saying that learning about what Kelly Golub has done as far as renderings could be a place to start the conversation. But I think having more conversation as a commission on our interest in participating in sports as it pertains to the master plan and Tumwater, I'm curious where everyone's at with it. And whether that's just a covered play area or whether that's a massive indoor facility, whether it's concert and sports, I mean, there's 101 ideas floating around.
Least.
Yeah. And then obviously the tribal like initiatives are going to hopefully pick some of that up, but obviously aren't gonna happen overnight. I mean, are you gonna get that happening overnight, Bob?
That's the way we do things. But I just on the sports thing, there are several individuals and groups that, and I'm sure Mike knows, there's a ton of them out there that, I mean, I've had folks come to me and, of course, they're interested in our tribal property too, but they know the port is economic development in Thurston County and there are several who would like to talk to us about ideas. I know one individual who'd love to put a baseball stadium on the peninsula, so that sort of thing is out there.
And I don't know the best way to frame that conversation. It's a chicken and an egg, right? Like, what do we want? Well, what can we do? But maybe that is. Maybe Mr. Economic Development Director has an idea of how to frame that conversation.
And how, and ultimately how the port can be involved,
Yeah.
or does it make sense for the port to be?
And I think it's just another example of where figuring out how to do an RFP that says to the private like nonprofit, whoever, this is what we want, help us get there. I think that there are lots of interested parties in all these cases, whether it's a sports complex, a hotel, affordable housing, and helping us as a commission figure out how to create the structure around, well, here's what we want. Now, people who do this efficiently help us get there.
Would it be helpful to include, like, have a broader meeting with other jurisdictions? Or not?
That's a way to not have the meeting. I wonder, Alex, I think at some point, but right now, there's not even a level set at the commission between some of the stuff Bob just alluded to, Commissioner Isle, some of the stuff Commissioner Harding knows, some of the opportunities that have come to a city of Olympia, but never kind of made it to a conversation here. So what would you think about finding a slot? I don't know when we move to the 2-a-month schedule, but for a work session, that's about 45 minutes, and that's on sports and recreation opportunities for community and economic development in the county. So it's not about specifically yet the tactical thing about our RFP, but like understanding the players and what's happening. There are, for example, when I was running Malcolm Miller at the City of Lacey, it's a big priority that there are recreational fields up there and their investments in those. I understand there's not a stadium, but some kind of performance.
The amphitheater.
I've heard the word the amphitheater, but like how that fits, it would be great to get a lay of the land and invite a few key stakeholders. Not exclusive at all. Mike, would you like to join us at the table? There we go.
Well, and the destination master plan work that Experience Olympia and Beyond did synthesized what already exists and what the gaps are, so that.
The just real fast way that I would frame the conversation up. So if you look at the RCW that guides ports, RCW 53, and then there's 5308, which is the powers that a port has. So there's certain things you can do and certain things that you can't do. And it's so RCW 5308 is where those powers are listed. I'm going to get even one step nerdier on you. 5308 245 is your ability to promote tourism. So it would be in that vein. So I don't think that the port could just build a sports facility just to have a sports facility, because it's not one of the sort of listed like things that ports do. I do think that you could tie the thing, this regional thing, to tourism. And I would tell you, if you spend time with the destination master plan, sports and recreation is one of our key tourism drivers. So the way that I would probably frame that conversation up, and it may take a little while, is I would actually, what you're alluding to, tie it strongly to the destination master plan. I would most likely be thinking about actually bringing in somebody from the Visitor Convention Bureau. Now they're short executive director right now, so it may take some time, but I would be looking at it in that frame. If you were to do it down here or in Tumwater on properties that we have, how are you driving this as a tourism component? Because that would have to be the justifying power or mechanism that most likely we would need to use to do something like that. It's the way we justified the children's selling the property for the Children's Museum. It's the way that you would justify the Port Plaza. It's going to draw people down to our waterfront. It's a facility associated with tourism. So that's the real fast way. I would probably give it a couple of months before you have and get that person on at the Visitor Convention Bureau, work with them, talk to them. It could be a part of your Peninsula Integrated Master Planning conversation. It could be a part of a conversation about community benefit or community assets in the Tumwater properties. So there's ways that we can, the properties that we can have that conversation on a little early, and make sure that you're using the right tool or authorization to frame it.
And one of my observations in the destination master plan work is that the port is uniquely positioned to look at the entire county, where the cities are looking at, they are advocating for the city. And when we're talking about regional tourism, the port is really uniquely positioned to zoom out. And so that's where, and I think it's a both and, like, I agree with you, we need to give it a little time with them hiring an executive director to get the full deal conversation. But I do think we don't want to miss the opportunity if there is an opportunity in the master plan, destination waterfront, there's too many, but with the peninsula, we need to make sure we're asking ourselves the question at whatever the appropriate time is, to make sure if that is something that interests us, we're exploring it.
And the one place I'd push back and reinforce what you said is, I want to have more of the holistic bird's eye view before I have this conversation in the context of the peninsula or any properties of our own.
Fair.
So how we could get some of that.
So in terms of like, what is the demand? And
The kinds of projects people are talking about.
Yeah, the one area I would want to be a little careful of is there are folks out there that are already in sort of this space. So you have parks departments that are already kind of going in some of these directions. I think that if you're looking at areas for partnership, instead of us taking on something exclusively on our own, I think that looking at what is the Thurston County Parks looking at, what is YMCA looking at, what is Olympia, Lacey and Tumwater Parks looking at. So it may be, instead of creating something whole cloth here, looking at opportunities for us to invest in partner, which I think that the RCW that still oversees that allows for that opportunity. So.
I think to Amy's point, it's a both and, so I'm gonna both Visitors Convention Bureau and also working with our regional partners.
That does send a signal that the Port of Olympia is thinking of economic development.
Totally. And I think that the tourism and there's a way for us to plug into that, but.
So as we're looking at your agenda items, are we assuming that the advisory and action is taken as we discussed on the meetings? Are we assuming we're probably canceling the February 18th? I mean, which are the meetings we're thinking would be
well,
retained?
once you adopt the resolution, it will be effective sort of after that date. So if it's going to be adopted on February 10th, then after that, any meetings would be special meetings or would be added to the beginning of a regular business meeting. Or we could put in an effective date that's later, if that's what you.
So, and your
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
I was just wondering, what is the date of the retreat?
25th.
February.
And so are you thinking it'll be, and sorry if this is in there and I forgot, the first and the third?
Second and fourth is what we typically do right now, I believe.
Second and fourth. And
Monday.
so not the third for the work session. Right. Okay, so for instance, it would be the 10th and the 24th, but not the 17th, which became the 18th.
Yeah.
Okay. Destination master plan, destination waterfront. Port Peninsula master. Plan. Okay, I mean, I think the second and the fourth makes sense, and having it be effective so that we don't have the 18th meeting makes sense. What do you think? Fair?
Oh, yeah, I assume we're planning, assuming this is.
This is going away.
That could always
Yes.
change.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Were there other future topics that people have that aren't listed already in the side, like this sheet by Alex?
Just what you had mentioned about Mike presenting on his economic development ideas and where he sees that we're at and where we're going.
And then the waterfront center building, and we talked a little bit about this, but I think it's good for the commission as a whole. Where are we at with that? We allocated some money to the consultants to do some research and market analysis. When will that, did
Yeah.
that get put on pause? If
Yeah.
so, then where, and then is the commission interested in reframing potential opportunities there now that we have an economic development director on board? Maybe that said person has some ideas, because we still need a marina office, we still need, we would still love to see educational, like, there's a lot of things that I've heard the commission say they want, that may still make a lot of sense, but yep, as things are evolving, we might need to.
And we could do a briefing on that at probably February 10th would be the best, because back in the January 27th meeting.
So my question is, you have an advisory on January 27th about the purchase and sale of the Dancing Goats building. And that will be without any context of like, that it's just a strategic property to buy.
No, we were gonna say that we want to use it for administrative offices and provide some rationale for why we think that's a good idea.
So I think it would be helpful to have a very brief integration of,
Waterfront Center.
yeah, at the same
Okay.
time. Really.
Okay.
I know it's a lot.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Yeah, build it into PowerPoint.
Because we've been speaking about it,
Right.
but we haven't really walked the public through that.
That's true.
Yeah, true.
Maybe questions.
It may not get out till
We'll get together.
Second, maybe a little, I may not be able to get it all packed in by noon tomorrow, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Back maybe a little bit later, but yes, happy to do it. And then it just, we were sort of thinking it would be good to prioritize the City of Tumwater joint meeting. You all in their council, just because we have so much going on with them and it would just be good to connect. But if there are other joint meetings with either, say, tribal leadership or City of Lacey or the County Council, you know, whoever that you would like us to prioritize, we're happy to do that.
You know, Thurston County is not on there.
Right.
I think, in my opinion, Tumwater is the priority based on the work we have both pending and upcoming. And we haven't met with them in a while. But I think adding Thurston County is important. You know, with the DNR cuts that came up last year, having good communication with our county commissioners.
Our new county manager.
Your new county manager, the HCP, like there's, so I think that
Okay.
is important also. And
And they're doing a lot in South County.
Yeah.
That would be good to.
yeah, Grand Mound,
Yeah.
like all
Yeah,
that
Grand Mound,
rezone,
yeah.
like, yeah, that's actually a good point.
Okay, I can reach out to Leonard Hernandez.
Like, do you think almost an update on this is on the land use planning side?
Mhm.
You're saying?
And economic development.
And I'm just gonna put it on the record. I wanna talk to Tacoma about Maytown.
Oh,
Yes, I do.
good one.
And when
Because-
will you be doing that?
I think, here's what I think. I think the Port of Tacoma and the Port of Olympia have people who are willing to have courageous conversations about real solutions. And whether that be habitat, whether that be economic development, having that property lay fallow is not helping any of those things. So I would love to have that conversation this year.
Okay, so, and does Port of Tacoma currently own it?
They do, and they
Okay.
can't do anything without talking to us, but they have, there's this weird like they're in control, but
I need to talk to her.
but we've had some
Hands are
conversations.
tied without us.
Yes, and we've had some conversations at WPPA meetings that we think that we could be creative together.
All right then.
So I think a formal
Joint meeting with the-
conversation. We are not afraid to have the conversation because that's how we come up with solutions.
Right.
And I would think maybe in Q2 and in quarter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In Q1, maybe Mike Reed could reestablish some.
He's like, how about Q4?
About that.
Being we're assigning Mike, you know, the city of Lacey misses us since we
Yeah.
pulled the CDC building. I'm just,
Love us.
yeah, so.
Okay, and I've got some regular meetings with Rick Walk, their manager, and I think they would love to
And I think the makerspace is such a low hanging fruit of like us participating in Lacey and our contribution last year of we kind of upped our contribution. But our participation, we talked about it doing a staff thing there or something.
Okay. And we did dedicate, that we affirmatively responded to their request. for
Yep.
$35,000.
No, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, so I think they are giving us some perks in return, so we can have like a party. Do some things we make. We can make custom.
Yeah,
portable
that's
demos.
cool.
Yeah,
So
get
cool.
Stuff out.
Yeah. And they're trying to work more with St. Martin's on workforce development. Like there's a whole bunch of things from a workforce economic development that really would be easy things for us to participate in.
Okay. Okay.
Cause I think sometimes you think, oh, we sold a building, we should go buy a whole nother building. And it's like, well, no, there's other ways that we can engage in the meantime.
Okay.
In my mind.
So why don't I reach out to all of these, although we'll delay on reaching out to Port of Tacoma, and try to schedule something more in the second quarter of the year about Maytown.
I mean, I wasn't trying to direct that, just that there should be a little staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think Mike and I could go talk to Eric Johnson. Okay, we'll just start reaching out to folks because it always takes forever to schedule these things.
Yeah.
I have another agenda item. I see for action the airport master plan adoption. I believe there were questions asked at the last meeting about process and environmental integration
SEPA,
of things
SEPA,
that
SEPA.
we asked for folks to come back on.
Okay,
I don't see
right,
that slotted in here.
all right.
And
I think that they extended the timeline to accommodate for that, and I think that they did, and I think Chris did respond to that. Correct?
I think so. I think what I didn't get full clarity on is the request about SEPA.
It's gonna come after the March 10th meeting for SEPA.
So no, so we changed it up. Initially, we had talked about doing SEPA after the master plan was adopted, but realized, and based on Jan Wood's feedback, that really it's better to do SEPA in advance of the adoption so that all the environmental impacts have been identified and you all have a chance to review the determination, the SEPA determination. But Commissioner Savada, you asked for something about SEPA, and was it the SEPA process
Checklist?
or?
I asked the question in the moment based on what people were talking about, but I have to admit, I don't have my notes in front of me. So I'll have to, but I don't want to drop the ball if I promise. You know, if I
Yeah.
ask staff to follow up on something, I guess I'd ask a question. When is the town hall scheduled for in the context of all this? Not the town hall, the meeting that happens next on the master plan?
There's a
Open
public
house.
hearing, and that's gonna be on March 10th.
That's the
And the
public.
public hearing is really, you're required to have a public hearing every time you update your comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. So that's sort of what it's for, is because it's being incorporated into the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvement. We could do a couple of things. I could, in the executive director report, respond about some of the SEPA questions. We could also have another briefing or some kind of presentation at future meetings about SEPA, and we can open things up again for more feedback on the plan. It's really how you all would like to. We could even do a town hall on the master plan.
I think we've already done multiple town halls.
Yeah.
I think that making sure that we're closing the loop on responding to questions that we said we would answer is the most important part.
Okay, we'll go back and
Like-
watch the.
And so whether that's in your executive director report, or if you feel it's necessary in a different forum, but just ensuring that,
Okay. Answer.
yeah, that,
And the challenge here is that we took all this public input. We're clear about the engagement spectrum, that this is not like a collaborative document. But no one is there who was taking the input, who can say, here's what we heard and here's why
Here's how it was. incorporated.
why we didn't incorporate it even,
Right.
like, or what. And so it's very hard to address people's concern that was all 2 years ago and it was a different set of people, without being able to at least address, here's what we heard and here's why we do or don't regard it. And so we're a little bit stuck. I don't know. It's not clear. I've asked several times now. It's not clear that staff have a way to say more. And it's because it's not truly a public process and it's really confusing and hairy.
My guess is we're still using the same consultants that have been helping us through this master planning process, so we can ask them about the public engagement and how that was incorporated or not incorporated into the document, and definitely respond to that.
Well, and Warren was the one fielding that, so it sounds like Warren's not available, but there is a summary in his brain.
Yeah, and we can do that so that at the March 10th meeting, we can be ready to respond to all of that.
Well, and it sounds like at this point, all that public comment will be.
Yeah.
Please join us. We're having a work session.
I would sit over here.
Thank you.
I have one other agenda item, but first, does anyone else? I just looked over here and saw Joel. So we have our POCAC and now we have an economic development subcommittee, but we haven't always, I think we haven't fully grappled with like how to best utilize the expertise of the many individuals willing to serve on the POCAC. And we saw so many wanting to stay on another time. So I'd like us to, at some point, be thinking about the role they can play, especially if we're lessening the number of formal work sessions we have, the role they can play in hosting public engagement on different topics and being eyes and ears and also on inviting commissioners, like having it be a noticed meeting where we're not there making decisions, but where there's an expectation that we could go and listen ourselves or hear from the chairs. So that's something we'd have to engage the POCAC about. And so POCAC engagement seems to me to still be something we're refining and get better at.
I agree. And that was something that we talked about last year was essentially the one community work group is my reference point, which is what the city of Olympia did around drawing out the feedback of the community, really broad-based stakeholders on a particular topic. And I think that the POCAC is uniquely positioned to be able to help us with that work. And it isn't going into it with a goal in mind. It's going into it listening and being really intentional about ensuring you're having diverse stakeholders participate, because lots of people can't make it to these meetings. Lots of people, how are we engaging with the people that are at work or, taking care of their children or
So I've invited Joel Hansen, who's our POCAC chair or one of our two chairs or chair to come, and we're doing agenda setting if you want to help inform what this agenda item might look like in the future.
I just had a quick comment. Recently in the last week, there was a flurry of emails from members of the POCAC that they saw the packet for this meeting and saw the commissioner assignments and wanted to see if our POCAC meetings and subcommittee meetings could be added to those commissioner assignments. I don't necessarily think that's really appropriate, but rather that officially in a public meeting, in extending official invitations to the commission to attend our POCAC meetings, regular POCAC meetings and subcommittee meetings, I think is absolutely appropriate, and that it be formalized in some way. I don't want to add to the assignments. And I think that the work of the POCAC should be independent commissioned.
So one thing in keeping with our new vision for commission meetings, maybe on that second meeting month where theoretically there's more room for discussion, we could have a regularly scheduled sort of POCAC agenda item.
because I think that one of the things with the POCAC is you haven't had consistency, we're building the plane as we fly a little bit. And we're trying to look at the workload of the commission to make it reasonable. This is completely out of left field, but what if one commissioner came to every POCAC meeting and we rotated and then the commissioner reflected back, because that would be, there's 5 of us and there's probably 10, like 2 a year, right? Is that, because I think we want to demonstrate our engagement and commitment to the POCAC, but we also want to be reasonable with the workload. I don't know.
And that's less for Missy not having to notice certain meetings. one of us could attend and report back. Reasonable.
I don't know.
My mind went to the same place and the same map, 2 meetings. Then I thought about logistically coordinating and, kind of,
Is
are
that
you expected to find a substitute or like how, how that works. But my mind went to the same place as Commissioner Harding. At the same time, what I was raising was an additional thing, which is there a way that the POCAC can help with getting our community input
Mhm.
on different things, this desire for the town hall and for these forums that are less formal, not decision-making settings, more interaction. I just think of how staff intensive that can be. And yet, isn't that why we have a community advisory committee, like to kind of try to help connect the community? So.
And I'm all for it. I think that it'd be awesome and super helpful. I think from some of what I've heard, some people really want to engage directly with the mission. And so then it's still be the same, adding more. Having digital town halls or having you all come to it. But we can give it a whirl.
I would say from my perspective, to address the two things in order, I think my sense of the POCAC is we're ready to help in whatever way we can, engaging the public, if that means holding work session or a public hearing or a forum or whatever we want to call it, whatever format we want it to take, with the understanding that it puts some workload on staff. And so we don't determine those things as volunteers, but just stating that that's a reality. And to your point, Commissioner Harding, I think we would welcome commissioners to attend, but I don't think as volunteers, we're in any position to make a recommendation that they come to our meetings. So, we would love to have commissioners attend and, be a part of it. And I think we're just now, with the establishment of the subcommittees, we're getting kind of into a routine where the real work of POCAC is happening at the subcommittee level. And those meetings are also public, although we don't take public comment by design at those meetings. And then our POCAC meetings become a little more formal, where much of the meeting is taking up with report out from the subcommittees of the work that they're doing. And then as we go along in this process, when we get to a point where we're making an official recommendation as the POCAC to the commission, that would be something that the entire POCAC votes on, given the work of a subcommittee. If that makes sense. Did I explain that clearly?
Because on something like the airport, we don't have sort of a standing citizen community group that engaged with that, who now is like, yeah, we were all part of this. This is our conversation. So.
And in that specific instance, because of the prescriptive nature of the airport master plan, there was a technical advisory group that is separate from POCAC and is specific to the airport master plan. And I think that's because of the FAA guidance on that.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on agenda setting? Do we feel like? When will our next agenda setting conversation be?
How about second meeting of the month? As part of other business, we will, we could even make other business into agenda setting. Could change the resolution to that, if that would be helpful. Okay,
Good call.
Well then, let's look at what we have left on our agenda. We have adjourned, but first I'll ask if there's any good of the order announcements, I guess. Not actions, no, I guess I can't do that, it's not on the agenda. So,
It's descriptive.
let's adjourn.
Who is the staff person?
I'm the.